Finally, I am here to talk about Oregon's latest commit. Fascinating, interesting, and nostalgic, all wrapped up into one.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Fascinating top 10 list that I had to restrict slightly. I will explain on today's show, and I will explain why I was a little bit late getting today's show out there as well. Is Oregon starting a true freshman on offense? I will explore that question on the program today, which is brought to you by our friends over at Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/locked on. Josh Christensen is the latest member of Oregon's fifth-ranked 2027 high school recruiting class, 6'6", 250-pound edge prospect from Lake Oswego High School. This is just the second player I have covered who is a product of my alma mater that has committed to Oregon. Props to you. This would be a good trivia question. Obviously, I know the answer. If you can name the other one, drop it in the comments below. Or shoot me a message. Let's use the honor system here, and don't go ahead and look it up. But he is the second. I don't believe there has been another one. I definitely remember who the first one was. But in the 247 composite, he's the number 628 player nationally, number 53 edge prospect, and the number 2 prospect in the state of Oregon. He picked the Ducks. He's obviously verbally committed at this point in time. And you got to keep all these guys until signing day in December. But he picked the Ducks over Illinois, Oklahoma, Washington, and Cal. It just keeps popping up. I do imagine the number of times Oregon and Cal are after the same guy, or it comes down to 3 or 4 schools, and Oregon and Cal are 2 of them. I imagine that will decline for the class of 2028 and beyond. I think it will keep popping up. I just think relationships get established going back many years, and so Tosh Lupoy's probably known a lot of these guys for a while, and now that he's the head coach at Cal, he's, I think, just continuing that relationship in a lot of ways. But I don't know if he actually did visit Northwestern. They were in the fold as well. He's scheduled to visit them over the weekend. He visited Cal down in Berkeley 3 days before he committed to the Ducks, and Josh Christensen was a part of the June 12th weekend visitors as well. And he is the 19th commit, which means the next one will be number 20 of the 2027 cycle. And interestingly enough, he has something in common with one of Oregon's other commits. I don't exactly know how this works, but Achilles Reyna, who's a defensive lineman from the state of Washington in Rainier Beach High School, is also listed in the 247 composite as the 628th best player in the country. Don't know how you can have 2, but that's where we're at. And Christensen is the second lowest rated commit in Oregon's 2027 cycle. So this is kind of a luxury edition of sorts for the Ducks, and they have gone out and just dominated in-state recruiting in a way that they never have in the Dan Lanning era. And there isn't a necessarily unique blend of prospects that are coming out in this 27 cycle that Oregon's taking the opportunity to utilize the players in their backyard. Oregon is not a particularly talent-rich state when it comes to high school recruiting. Josiah Molden is the number 1 recruit in the state, and he's the number 1 guy by a pretty good margin. Oregon has 4 of the top 5. I mean, for 4 of Oregon's 19 commits to be in-state prospects is exceedingly rare. It is the first time that has happened at any point in a recruiting cycle in the Dan Lanning era with, at least a significant amount of time pass. You could maybe go back and find a spot where they had 4 guys committed and one of them was from Oregon. But with dozens of players in the fold, 4 of them being from the state of Oregon, That is unique. The reason I call this a luxury edition for the Ducks is this is, to me, all upside and there's no real downside. So Christensen is not someone who I have huge expectations for. The recruiting industry doesn't have huge expectations for him. He could become somebody that is an impact player. He will not be that, in my view, as a true freshman. And I'll get Brian on tomorrow to talk about what he sees from him on film. If he doesn't wind up being a contributor ever in his career and transfers one day, of course, we've seen plenty of guys do that. I don't think Oregon loses anything. It's easy for them as the biggest brand in the state of Oregon. Obviously, Oregon State is the only other one, and they have the, I think, 4th ranked player in the state, and Oregon has players 1, 2, 3, and 5. There's no downside to that, but the reason I call it a luxury sort of move is it's kind of, I talked about this with Malachi Garlington, another who's the lowest rated commit of Oregon's 2027 class, also from the state of Oregon, is you see some interesting physical traits. You see the upside. He's not a super refined prospect, won't be an impact player as a true freshman for several reasons, but if it works out one day, great. And if it doesn't work out, okay, you weren't putting all your eggs into this particular basket anyway. Devin Brooks, I think, is another good example to bring up here. He was, I believe, a Clackamas high school product and a 3-star recruit, was not a super highly rated guy. He may very well be Oregon's backup center going into this 2026 season. One of those positions that you don't think about right up until it is the most important position you can't stop thinking about on a football team. And that's a guy who had the same kind of profile just on the offensive side of the ball. Interesting size, doesn't have the unique traits in athleticism and kind of it factor that other elite prospects at the same position have. But if it works out and you keep him around for several years, then he can become somebody. But if you don't, hey, you're not losing a whole heck of a lot because you don't expect him to become a guy that is a high-level contributor, especially early in his career. So the interesting thing with Christensen, he's listed as an edge prospect. I don't know if that's what he's actually going to play in college. He's 6'6", 250, and most of his highlights, not all of them, like he can bend a little. I just don't look at him and see a guy that plays the same position as Rashad Streets, who's now a 5-star according to 247. Not in the composite, but just in their own rankings. He's like just off in the composite rankings there. Or Nasir Wyatt, or Mateo Uyunglele. I kind of see a little Tatum Tuioti in him, but I think what's going to happen here most likely for Christensen is I can almost guarantee he redshirts as a true freshman. He adds a bunch of weight, and then I think the ceiling, absolute ceiling, not saying he'll hit it, would be Tatum Tuioti, a guy that just plays really hard, high motor, doesn't have all of the abilities or traits that maybe the NFL loves or that, look really good in a recruiting ranking or such. But Tatum Tuioti was also an in-state recruit, and he was Oregon's defensive MVP last year and is one of their best players going into this 2026 season as well. But what Christensen does well and what stands out to me on film is not typically what I associate with the edge position. He shows pretty good power. He sheds blockers really well. I think he tackles a tad high, but that can be coached. He's not as explosive. He's not as twitchy as other guys coming off the edge. And that he obviously has a high level of comfort playing inside because he's done that a bunch under Steve Corey, who has been there, I don't even know how long at this point. He's just an absolute legend at Lake Oswego High School. So, he's been coached pretty well there, but I could see that position change coming. And look, maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe he adds just a little weight and he's kind of an Elijah Rushing type strong side defensive end, or an Ashton Porter type that can kind of flip in or out. He's obviously at Houston now. Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I'd probably give it an SSA of 7 that he becomes an interior defensive lineman, or primarily an interior defensive lineman by the time he actually turns into being an Oregon Duck. So really interesting pickup for the Ducks in this class, and that they're going after these guys that are not super highly rated, but they still have a top 5 class in the country, and then they can just take these sorts of flyers like that. It's definitely a luxury position to be in. Not every recruiting class in the country is able to say that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the nostalgia that I felt, given that I'm talking about this in a broadcasting capacity, obviously doing this show, and watching highlights with a camera that was up that was positioned up at the same spot where I used to broadcast games from on Laker Broadcasting, which is where my career in broadcasting began, at the field that I grew up going to, was awesome. It was awesome. There are not a lot of Division I football players that come out of Lake Oswego High School, but Oregon has the latest one. So leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at LockedOnDucks, however you want to get in touch. Speaking of playing early in careers, I don't think Josh Christensen is going to do that. Will anyone do that on offense this year? First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos can show up fast. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. And Indeed helps you do just that. So when I inevitably one day have to hire I'm just kidding. I don't have to hire someone. But if I did hire somebody to help me run this particular show, I've been doing it on my own for quite a while. But if I decide, boy, I want someone that can help me with X, Y, or Z. I'm not that good at social media. I fully admit that. Maybe I want someone to do. Indeed is where I would look, or perhaps the YouTube comments. But Indeed will get you the candidate for whatever job you're looking to hire for. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for making this show your first listen every day. If you tune into every episode and want to level up, check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. For $5 a month or $50 for the year, get access to ad-free audio on podcast, access to our members-only Discord chat where I hang out all the time, and other perks as well. Click the link in the description of this episode and become a Locked On Everydayer Club member today. As I will briefly mention later in today's show, second segment sips have never been more important than they are for me right now. It's all good. It's all good. So, I've got a Spencer Scale of Agreement take here. And if you want to submit a take for Spencer Scale of Agreement, all you have to do is use one of the many avenues to get in touch with me. And you send me a take about Oregon football, could be about other sports too. And I tell you 1 to 10 how much I agree and why, half numbers included. For those of you that are new here, that's how it works, just like this. SSA, one or more freshmen or redshirt freshmen will start on offense. Now, this is kind of simple in a way. And what this boils down to, because if you look at what Oregon's starting offense is likely to be, just think it out loud. Well, Dante Moore is not a redshirt freshman, nor a true freshman. Jordon Davison, no. Jamari Johnson, no. I believe you will see Evan Stewart, Jeremiah McClellan, DeCorian Moore start. None of them are true or redshirt freshmen. DeCorian Moore got hurt last year, but he didn't redshirt. He's a true sophomore coming into this season. Poncho at center. That's a senior. That's the opposite of a true freshman. Dave Iuli, redshirt senior, I believe. Yeah, that's even more the opposite of a true freshman. I think Fox Crater starts at left tackle. Now remember, this SSA is one or more freshmen or redshirt freshmen will start on offense. This really comes down to two positions. And for those of you that have been keeping track in your head, both of them are on the offensive line. Left guard or right tackle. Now, we have seen one of the freshmen who could start on the offensive line this year, and that's Tommy Toffee. In the spring game, he looked pretty darn good. He also had several moments where he didn't look quite ready to be starting in college football. Now, maybe he just needs more practice reps to get ready with that sort of stuff. But if you go back and really watch what he did, he had some really impressive reps. You go, wow, that doesn't look like a true freshman. Fact check true. He's 6'6", 340. He is massive. Played tackle in high school, can slide inside and play guard. Maybe he could push for time at right tackle, though I think he's going to be a guy that pushes to start at left guard this year. There are other guys that are going to be in consideration there, like Kavika Rogers could play guard. I think Janoris Wilson could make a good guard. He's played tackle so far, but I think he could play guard just fine. You also need to mention Douglas Utu in this conversation, not a redshirt or a true freshman, a guy who has a couple years of development within the Oregon system, advantage over a guy like Tommy Toffee. And then in the fall, you have to talk about Emmanuel Ihanacho, who is the highest rated offensive line recruit in Oregon history. Now, it is true that when Penei Sewell was a true freshman, he didn't just start, he was Oregon's best offensive lineman. He is also incredibly unique. Now, Nacho could be unique. Certainly the recruiting ranking would indicate that he is a special type of prospect. And so one of those guys starting at either left guard or right tackle, because both can play either spot. I think Nacho wants to play tackle, but is okay playing guard, is what I've heard. And Tommy Toffee looks like he's pushing for that left guard spot. These guys are tremendously talented. They have the requisite size. Their bodies look physically ready to play up front. The question is, do they have everything else? Do they pick up the playbook? Do they understand how to adjust in different protection schemes? Do they know how to work together and pass off blitzers and twists and stunts? And, Tommy Toffee struggled with a couple twist and stunt pickups in the spring game, but that was literally his first college football action ever. But does that make him ready? Like, can he get through all of that and be ready to start for a national title contender? I do not know. So we'll see. I'm going to put this at a 4 because I don't see a true freshman or a redshirt freshman starting anywhere else. Messiah Hampton looked great in the spring game. He could play at wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be starting. I don't think he's knocking any of those guys out. And I think if, let's say Evan Stewart suffers an injury setback, or DeCorian Moore gets banged up again, or J-Mac gets hurt, I think Iverson Hooks is the first guy off the bench, the UAB transfer, and he is definitely not a redshirt or true freshman either. So I think it's either left guard or right tackle where you could see a true redshirt freshman starting on offense this year. Offensive and defensive line, but particularly offensive line, it's the hardest thing to play as a true freshman. It is harder than the defensive line, without question. So I put this at a 4. It wouldn't shock me because of how college ready those guys appear to be. I think there are enough other options to where in my head, I'm not expecting it necessarily. So I'm going to put that at a 4. We'll see how that ages over time. We will also see how you all react to another top 10 list. Should I have put Jordon Davison on a list that I'm going to give you to wrap today's show? And also, I'll tell you why today's show is a little bit late. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, Everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations, like Oregon, for example, know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports just like it is in business. You don't want things to be scattered. You don't want them to be haphazard. You don't want them to be chaotic. You don't want to be all over the place. You want them to be unified, on the same page, conformed, consolidated. These are all good words, and this is what Odoo helps you do with your business. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Check out Odoo today at odoo.com/lockedon. All right, so I got asked to make another top 10 list to celebrate 10 years of the Locked On Podcast Network, which I've been a part of for over 4.5 now. Time flies when you're having fun, and I certainly am, and I appreciate all of you out there for giving me the opportunity by supporting the show and listening to host this particular program. So the next top 10 list is 10 best Oregon running backs of all time. Now, I will continue to make these if you'd like me to, and I have a couple other notes that people sent me of, hey, you should do a top 10 this, do a top 10 that. I'm going to keep this to guys that I have watched. The the quarterback discussion got all sorts of pushback in the good old YouTube comments area on account of the fact that I didn't watch Dan Fouts play. I didn't watch Bill Musgrave play. I think it's more appropriate if I stick to guys that I have actually seen play, or there are enough highlights of that I can get a sense, along with the player's stats, of what he actually was as a football player. So, top 10 Oregon running backs all time. Gosh, number 1 was so easy. My favorite Duck ever. That's LaMichael James. Number 2, Jonathan Stewart, who is one of the highest rated recruits in Oregon history, and he was the first kind of NFL semi-star, really good player I remember watching growing up, because Oregon didn't send a lot of guys to the league. It's very different now, but Jonathan Stewart was the first guy that I looked at in the NFL and went, wow, I was just watching him in Oregon. Now he's crushing in the NFL. Oregon's all-time leading rusher, Royce Freeman, sitting there at number 2. And LaMichael James, by the way, head of 2 5-star running back recruits. And he was a lowly 3-star from Texarkana. And they say Oregon doesn't develop. Kenyon Barner there at number 4. I don't know if that's too high. That feels right to me, obviously. That's why I put him there. I've got Jeremiah Johnson at number 5. Jeremiah Johnson statistically, I think he had 1,000-yard season, and that was back in 2008. He ran for over 1,200 yards. That's really, really good. He was also over 6 yards a carry every single year that he was with the Ducks. So he was only the true feature guy 1 year, I think, like 2006. I think he got hurt in 2007. But 2006, he averaged over 6 yards a carry on 103 touches, but he got 168 in 2008. And I remember him running wild in that Civil War game. Man, he was awesome. Super awesome running back to watch. So I put Jeremiah Johnson there at number 5. The well-rounded nature of Jeremiah Johnson is why I have him over DeAnthony Thomas, who is a running back. He's really just a football player, but who would I trust more? Like, would DeAnthony ever be the number 1 running back? No. Like, he's not a true bell cow. He's better between the tackles than he got credit for, but that's the only reason he's sitting there at number 6 for me, because there has never been, nor will there ever be, another like DeAnthony Thomas. I did not realize at the time growing up just how uniquely that guy ran on a football field. Is totally insane. Maurice Morris, I vaguely, I mean very vaguely, remember watching him as a wee lad of 4 years old or so. Had a couple of really productive seasons with the Ducks. If the numbers were better, and look, he was behind Royce Freeman, so it was kind of tough, I would probably have Thomas Tyner higher on this list. I've always been a Thomas Tyner stan. I really have been. And I don't have Jordon Davison on this list because his career isn't done. So I think he can make his way on there is what is really exciting. I think he is talented enough for us to look at him and say he could be in the top 5. I really believe that. 15 touchdowns as a true freshman, over 600 yards. If he puts up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons starting this year and then in 2027 and then goes to the NFL draft, I don't think I can put him over Kenyon because the numbers that Kenyon and LaMichael put up in Chip's offense were just silly. I mean, they were, and you know, Kenyon, another guy that would have had insane stats in college or more insane stats if he hadn't been behind LaMichael. But the first year that Kenyon became the full-time guy, he ran for over 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns. Rumor has it he's still running down in the Coliseum. Anyway, so Thomas Tyner I have at 8. CJ Verdell, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. That's not as common with Oregon running backs, as great as they've been, as you would think. The guys at the top of this list have done that. The guys that are on the right side, if you're watching on YouTube, have not really, except for Verdell. I don't know if Verdell was the most talented. The production gap, I had to put him over LeGarrette Blount, who I have there at number 10, and Blount felt like a little bit more of a specialty type. Obviously, he went in the NFL and had a great career and did and just scored a bunch of touchdowns. But LeGarrette and DeAnthony are on there in the same vein for me in that they're kind of. I want to emphasize the words kind of in this expression. They're not the most. Here's a better way to put it. They're not fully well-rounded backs. LeGarrette Blount is not going to break a lot of 50 to 60-yard runs, and DeAnthony Thomas is not the most ideal guy to have in there on a 3rd down and 1 when you really need to just grind out a yard. So, and I think at the things they were specifically good at, LeGarrette Blount power and DeAnthony speed, I think DeAnthony was significantly better, even though LeGarrette was really good. So, there's my top 10 list. LaMichael, Jonathan Stewart, Royce Freeman, Kenyon Barner, Jeremiah Johnson, DeAnthony Thomas, Maurice Morris, Thomas Tyner, CJ Verdell, LeGarrette Blount. And yeah, LeGarrette would probably get booted if Davison has a great couple of years. If he goes back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, Jordon Davison's probably number 5. I am bullish on, I'm absolutely positively bullish on that guy. So, a couple funny things, in a way, to wrap today's show. I have to shout out Homer, is all I know him as on Twitter, because I frustratedly tweeted out that SeaTac is a terrible airport because it is the worst airport in America. I don't think it's particularly close. Some people say LAX. I fly to LAX all the time. It's not great. It is infinitely better than SeaTac. SeaTac is just absolutely awful for so many reasons. I'm not going to go on a long rant about that, but Homer made a fantastic point. He said, all PDX, the airport, needs is a Beechers, and they'll be the best airport in the country. That is an unbelievably good take because Beechers rocks. And if you don't know what Beechers is, you are missing out. Go to Seattle sometime to watch Oregon play the Huskies and go downtown or anywhere that you can find a store and get Beechers. It's awesome. It's also at the Salt Lake Airport, by the way. So I had to shout that out. Okay, so this show is obviously coming to you all much later than normal. And I do apologize for that because I know many of you listen to or watch the show as a part of a routine and you like it being there at the same time. And as a true creature of habit, I understand and respect that. There was an extended stay in the hospital for me for many hours. I'm fine. It's all good. Everything checked out to be okay. It was there out of precautionary measures, but that is why production got a little delayed and why the timing of shows for the next day or two might be a little bit different than normal, but I will continue to get you a show every day. And I appreciate everybody that reached out and made sure I was all right. I am fine, I promise. But that is why today's show is not dropping at the same time. But I just had to read this interaction I had. I got to shout out Paul on this one. So the show usually drops at 3 a.m. Pacific time. I get a message from Paul, who's just a listener of the show, longtime listener of the show. This is the interaction. I do not see a show today. Did you die? First of all, if I had, how long? Like, let's say Twitter had been weird, which it is sometimes, and I hadn't seen that message for a while. At what point would you have gotten concerned? If I had been unable to do shows for 2 more days and I wasn't responding to this message, genuinely curious how that would have gone. So he says, "Did you die?" I said, "No, I just felt like I was kind of going to, but I'm all good and I'll get caught up." Then he goes, "Hope you were better. You have to at least outlive Roman of Locked On Huskies. Them's the rules." So I had a terrible night and early morning, but at least I got that interaction out of it. That made it all worth it. So the content will continue to flow here at Locked On Ducks. I promise. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.